I think I know some more people are coming in, but I think we're ready to get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Beauty Boss Spotlight. This is kicking off a really exciting day of beauty program here at the Glam Live virtual Winter Style and Beauty Summit. I am going to introduce myself. I'm Brian Underwood. I'm the beauty director of Oprah Magazine, and I'm also the director of beauty partnerships here at Glam Hive. And before I introduce our amazing, amazing panelist today, a woman who frankly needs no introduction. If you know anything about beauty or anything, I'm going to just go over a really few quick housekeeping notes. So please, at any time, if you have any questions or you have any tech issues, please feel free to leave that in the chat box. How this is going to work is Jamie and I are going to talk for a half hour. And if there's any questions from anyone in the room, we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. If not, we'll just continue the conversation. And this session will be recorded and will be available to all of you post-event in case there are some people that are in other rooms that maybe have missed this. I encourage you all to follow us at Glam Hive on social and engage with us using the hashtag GlamHiveLive. And I just want to send a big thank you to our presenting sponsor, Mary Kay. Mary Kay is a brand with a heritage in female entrepreneurship. So they're a great sponsor for us and a great way to introduce our amazing panelist, who is the beauty boss of beauty bosses. I'd like you all to say hello to Jamie Kern Lima, who I'm sure many of you know is the founder and CEO of IT Cosmetics. She started this brand in her living room with her husband and a few close confidants, and ended up selling it to L'Oreal for over $1 billion in one of the largest beauty acquisitions of all time. But Jamie, I think that's like the least interesting thing about you, actually. You just really have so much more. So welcome, Jamie.
Oh, Brian, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thanks for everyone at Glam Hive for the invitation. And I love that you guys are all coming together on a day like this to just celebrate each other and all rise higher together. So thank you for having me. I'm super honored to be here.
Yeah, and someone just asked what was the hashtag. It's Glam Hive Live. I think another thing I should let you all know about Jamie is that in addition to all of her accomplishments, she can now add one to her resume, which is best-selling author. This is her new book, Believe It, which just came out this week, right, Jamie? Jamie, did we lose you? I think you froze up a little. I'll keep talking and hopefully Jamie will be able to get back. This is her new book, Believe It, which just came out this week. So you're back, Jamie?
I'm back, and
yeah.
I'm hardwired in. Hopefully it doesn't go in and out, but well, yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, Believe It just came out like 72 hours ago. It's been 2 years of sobbing my eyes out writing every word, but it just launched this week. So thank you so much.
Already an Amazon bestseller. No surprise there, but I mean, how incredible after being out in the world for 72 hours. I mean, like Jamie, that has to feel good.
You know, thank you, Brian. I think, it's really a book for a lot of people think like, oh, is it a story of how you went from Denny's waitress to like this idea, launching this idea in your living room, building it to, a $1 billion company. It's all those things, but it's probably like 95% stories I've never shared before that I hope everyone can relate to, because my story is really one of a girl who went from not believing in herself to learning how to believe in herself, and like not trusting myself to learning how to hear my own gut and make the decision to trust it. And I think it's not just my story, it's the story of so many people out there. We're all on this journey, right? Of going, how do we actually hear our gut, trust ourselves, and become the person we're born to be? And so it's really a book for anybody dealing with self-doubt who wants to, overcome it. And so that's my hope and prayer, is that it's a source of inspiration and belief for everyone who grabs it. And so, yeah, I'm so happy to be here with you, by the way. I literally, your face popped on the screen. I'm like, It's
I mean,
like
we,
joy.
we sort of go back. I mean, I remember meeting you when you were just launching it. And that's what I loved so much about the book is there was so much in here that I knew of your story. And like you said, there was so much in here that I just learned reading it. And I read it, I think I read it in 2 days, 2 evenings. And I wanted to ask you, Jamie, like at the heart of this book, and you just sort of talked about it, but at the heart of this book, there's this tension between listening to yourself, trusting your instincts, and heeding the advice of perhaps people who have more experience than you do in a particular area. You know, this idea of intuition versus expertise. How, in your opinion, based on your experience, how does one strike that balance in business and in life?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like that's like the defining question
For sure.
of if we end up going after our dreams or if we talk ourselves out of our own truth. And
Yep.
here's what I mean by that is I have the great honor now and great blessing of having so much invaluable advice from experts that's helped me a ton, that's guided me a ton.
Right.
But everyone has an opinion.
Yeah.
And my journey, and I love this question so much because I think anyone joining us right now or watching this on the replays after who is maybe a makeup artist or a stylist or whatever it is, and they're doing their own business. My journey was years and years and years of everyone, especially in the beginning, saying that what I was doing, that I needed to change what I was doing if it was going to work, right?
Yeah.
So I have skin condition called rosacea, which is hereditary. There's no cure for it, and it's really bumpy and red. And I was in what I thought was my dream job in television news. And I would hear in my earpiece from my producer, there's something on your face, there's something on your face, you need to wipe it off. And it was the makeup breaking up. And long story short, I started like an obsession trying to find something that would work, and nothing did. And that's really what sparked the idea for It Cosmetics. But when I launched the company, there was really, this was pre-YouTube when I first launched it, and nobody was showing real people yet, right? And so I had this like vision, what if I show how the product actually works on my bright red bumpy skin? And what if I have models all ages, shapes, sizes, gender identity, skin tones,
which was revolutionary.
Yeah. And I was like, and so then I thought, this makes so much sense, right, Brian? Like intuitively, and I believe every one of us, every person with us live right now, everybody watching this, every one of us has a knowing inside our own gut. I believe it's always right. And I just sat there and intuitively, I would say to the buyers at all the department stores and the beauty retailers that were telling me no, I would say to them, and even QVC, all of them, for 3 years, they all told me no, I wasn't the right fit. I needed to change our packaging. I couldn't use models that were real people or it would never sell. And I would say to them, okay, but intuitively, if I'm wanting to buy a product and I don't see someone who looks like me showing, with the product on, how do I know it's going to work for me? Right. And this went on for 3 years, and it was no after no after no after no. And I think every one of us, no matter what journey we're on, has somebody look us in the eye and tell us, no, you're not the right fit. You're not enough. You don't belong. You need to change who you are if you want us to carry your product. And I feel like sometimes experts give feedback and it's a gift and it's helpful. And a lot of times it's not. And I think our life comes down to learning to hear our own gut instinct and say, is that right for me? Is that advice right for me? Is that a gift? Should I apply that? Right? And a lot of times I would say, oh yeah, that was good. That was good. I didn't realize the font in my packaging wasn't big enough. I didn't, those things. But other times, and this was 3 years, like we got down to under $1,000. Everyone knows the highlight reel, Brian. Everyone knows, oh, this girl sold her company for $1 billion. It Cosmetics today is the largest luxury makeup company in the country. But this is why I thought it was so important to write this book, because when we just see the highlight reel, we feel alone in our own setbacks, alone
Right.
in our own struggles, alone in our own rejections. So I lay it all out there,
Yeah.
because had I ever, like when I look back at the mistakes I made, the things I did wrong, they almost always come down to when I didn't trust myself.
Right.
And I just think it's such a universal thing. And had I ever, because we have moments in life where it's like our guts on one hand, experts' opinions on the other. And if they differ, which one do we listen to?
Right.
The defining moments of how It Cosmetics turned into a billion-dollar company are simply come down to decisions where I didn't listen
Yep.
to people who told me to change what I was doing, even if it meant I could get into their stores.
Yeah.
I trusted my gut on the journey.
Yeah.
Um, and that's also what made all the difference. Like, you know, even L'Oreal for a long time said to change different things in our meetings, and some of them were so valuable and so helpful. But when we eventually became part of the L'Oreal family, I think why they acquired us is because we were doing stuff so different from all their other portfolio companies that
Right.
we complemented, right?
Right.
So, anyways, trusting your gut, I think, is the victory in life, not
Yeah.
the outcome of your company.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
you've obviously reached this incredible level of success, and there another big theme in the book is goals and being
Mm,
intentional. And my
yeah.
question is, there's a passage early on the book where you discuss goal setting. You even discuss, those keeping, goal setting journals. And I guess my
Yeah.
question is, can you be intentional about setting goals and also be someone who's open to enjoying the ride and seeing
Mm,
where the ride takes you? And
yeah.
how do we avoid being detrimentally single-minded?
Mm. Yeah, such a good question. I think, and it's funny because in the book, uh, by the way, I don't even know if I've shared this. I'm donating 100% of the proceeds from the book, by the way, all my author proceeds to Feeding America and Together Rising.
Amazing.
I don't know if I shared that. Anyways, we've raised 2.2 million meals so far this week, which is really cool. But so I go there with the mistakes I made, by the way, on burnout, on like all the things. But so I talk about a lot that I did wrong. But to
Yeah.
answer your question, one of the things about goal setting, I think this is that really for every person, um, I think it's so important to enjoy the ride, like to go with it, like set goals. But one of the things I talk about is, you know, um, a lot of people have a goal and then it never comes to fruition. And I think it's because they don't attach a why to every goal, and
Yeah.
not just a why, right? We hear a lot of people say like, oh, what's your why? And companies have whys and mission statements. But a lot of people, especially individuals, and I think this is really important, especially for the Glam Hive audience, anyone who is doing their stylist business, their artistry business, or really just any human being, is that we often will come up with a why for our goal or for our business, and it sounds really good. And when we say it to other people, they're like, "Oh, that's powerful." And then we stop, but we never actually do the work of like peeling back the layers. And I
Yeah.
think this is really important, and identifying like the why beneath the why.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that when you have a deep why for what you're doing, I think that it drives you to something greater than yourself.
Yeah.
So your goals might change, right? You might go with the flow and leave one dream and go after another, but
Yeah.
your deeper why for your hopes of impact on the world, I think when they're greater than yourself, I think that's huge. And just one quick example is, for 3 years, I every time I got knocked down or another no or another no, I still get no's all the time. But like every time in those years of not seeing any proof of success, one of the things that kept me going was I had done this work on peeling back the why beneath the why. And I talk about how to do this and believe it in my book a lot. But and here's what I mean. So because I created It Cosmetics, like, you know, I could have just said to myself, oh, my why is to solve my own problems,
Yeah.
or my why is to help so many other people who can't find makeup that works for them.
Yeah.
And if I would have shared that with someone else, that would have been like, oh, that's so great. You want to help a ton of people. And I did want to do both those things. But like, what I did early on was do the work of realizing like, oh wow, my whole life I've seen these, television commercials where everyone's photoshopped, and I always wanted to look like that, but yet they always made me feel not enough.
Yeah.
And I was like, what if I can create a great product, but also like use all different types of models, right? And what if I could try and do whatever I can to shift the definition of beauty for every little kid out there who's about to see these images and start doubting themselves,
Yeah.
and every adult who still does. And
Yeah.
I had that deep, it was like peeling back the layers and going deep. And so, I just want to share for everyone who's joining us today, right now, live or watching the replays later, who, is a stylist, is an artist, is a creator, is an ideator, is a human being with a goal. This is one of the most important things. And I see so many people never ever make it. Like, I've had the blessing of meeting tens of thousands of entrepreneurs now. A lot of them give up or they quit.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, one of those reasons is they didn't do the work of going deep on why is it for what they're doing? Why are they doing what they're doing? And how is it of service in a way that's greater than themselves?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when we're doing something that's just for us, or just to pay off our house mortgage, or just to, those things sound good, but they're usually not meaningful enough
Yeah.
for us to get back up every time it gets really hard and when we
Yeah.
get knocked down.
And I think what's so great about the book, with that advice, but the book in general, is your story and what you share in the book. It's so appropriate for budding entrepreneurs. And I think everyone has a little budding entrepreneur inside themselves. But it's just good advice in life when things get rough, when you get knocked down, which is going to happen. That kind of advice, finding the why, helps you pick yourself back up, dust yourself off, and keep going, right?
Yeah, and I think that one moment in the book, and I really shared stories that I hope become other things that other people can just put in their own toolbox and pull from when
Yeah.
someone literally tells them they're not going to make it, or when they have friends and family. A lot of us have friends and family around us who we love so much, but when we share our hopes and dreams with them, like they somehow lower our vibration, or like, because they don't dream the same way, or they don't
Yeah.
have the same types of ambition, or they see what we're doing through the lens of their own fear or
Yeah.
their own lack of experience. And I've heard from so many people, like I get DMs every single day on Instagram from people saying like, I have these dreams, but my partner just like doesn't support me, or and it's like, it's learning how, I talk so much about this, learning how to love everyone around us, but how to like take our microphone back from certain people on certain topics, and not hand it to others. And yeah, there's so many things in this book for everybody, really, whether they're an entrepreneur or just someone that has that inkling inside. And the one more thought too to share just really quickly too, Brian, is I don't know if you remember this part in the book, but we were about 2 years into It Cosmetics, and I wouldn't even look at my ATM receipt when it would come out, and I'd have to go get $20 cash.
Yes.
Like I couldn't handle like looking at it. Because I would physically feel ill. I
Yeah.
didn't know how we were going to make it. And we got a big call from a potential investor and a private equity company. And I thought like, oh my gosh, this is going to be life changing. Like if they invest in It Cosmetics, A, I'm not going to go bankrupt. And B, I bet that they could use, this was a big private equity company. So they had invested in a lot of the products in grocery stores that like have become household names. I'm like, if they invest in It Cosmetics, maybe they could use their leverage to actually get us into some of these retail stores that keep telling me no over and over and over. I was so excited, and we started doing all the meetings with them, and started the diligence phase, which is when they want you to show them your product pipelines, your all the things, your budgets, your projections.
Yeah.
And it got down to the final meeting, and I thought like this is going to be life changing. And my husband and I flew up for the meeting, and we were standing about 3 feet from the head guy, and they said, congratulations, we love your product, we really believe in it, but it's a no. We're going to pass on investing in It Cosmetics. And when I said, okay, because I'm so used to hearing no at that point, I'm like, can you tell me why? Like, can you give me feedback? Because usually feedback is a gift. And this guy was like 3 feet from me, And he says to me, do you want me to be really honest with you? And I'm like, yes, please. And he says, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. And I remember this moment. Well, first of all, I went in my car and sobbed my eyes out. But before that happened, I remember two things. Like I remember, and I also felt like a lifetime of body doubt and self-doubt
Yeah.
like fled my body. It felt like I was staring my own fear straight in the eye when he was talking to me. But I remember this deep feeling in that moment, Brian, when he said that, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. I had this deep feeling, like literally, I remember it like it was yesterday, that said he's wrong. Like I
Yeah.
just felt it, right? I felt it. And I also, and I know it's what's wild is I never felt anger toward him, or like I didn't even get mad. It hurt, but I didn't get mad because what I realized, like I had done the work on why
Yeah.
I wanted to do what I was doing. He was impacted by his whole life of seeing ads and images, and in his own mind, you needed to look a certain way to make him money. So
Mhm.
he was just as much impacted as me. And in a way, because I'd done the work on the why beneath the why, all his rejection did, besides hurt and suck and make me cry myself to sleep, it really fueled me to realize, oh yeah, like this, like things do have to change.
Yeah.
And 6 years later, by the way, the day L'Oreal acquired It Cosmetics,
I was going to say, I definitely remember this part of the book.
it was so good. It was, and listen, I didn't need anything from him. I believe in life, like we get what we give. And
Yeah.
anyways, but it was kind of fun that 6 years later, yeah, I heard from him, and the day L'Oreal acquired It Cosmetics, it was like the homepage of the Wall Street Journal. It was kind of everywhere out there because they announced it because they're a public company. And so he reached out and he said, congratulations, so happy for you. I was wrong.
Yeah.
And I learned it would have been the most successful investment in his company's history had he invested. But the other thing, oh gosh, this is like my favorite topic. Anyone who's with us now are going to watch the replays, just to share this before I forget. There's a famous saying, Brian, rejection is God's protection.
Yeah.
Some people say rejection's the universe's protection.
Yeah.
Anybody who's going through a season of rejection right now or a setback, like for me, it was years of rejection.
Yeah.
But when I look back now, even though like when you're in it, it sucks and it doesn't make sense, it doesn't feel unfair, all those things. Like had he believed in me, I was so desperate at the time. I probably would have just given him most of the company for almost no money. But because he didn't believe in me, by the time L'Oreal bought us, we were still the largest shareholder.
Yeah.
And so it was like the best. It was the best that he didn't believe in me at the time,
Right.
even though when we're in that season of rejection,
Doesn't feel great.
doesn't
Right.
feel great. Yeah.
Well,
I'm getting fired up, Brian. Okay,
well,
sorry,
I definitely remember that vignette of the book, because I remember practically cheering when you wrote about the email that came through. I think one of the other things you talk about a lot in the book is bringing other women to the table, bringing other women into the conversation, bringing other women, into where you are. And I think that's something that you talk about because you were kind of feeling that wasn't happening as much as you wanted to see it happening. Do you think that's changing? And do you think that the attitude of, if I bring another woman to the table, my seat will be taken, is changing?
I think it's changing. I think it has a long way to still change. I think that it is this antiquated,
Yeah.
deep belief that I've seen play out so many times. And I think that in the business world, for so many years, there was no or one woman in a meeting, and it's this antiquated thing. I think in general that someone else is our competition. And what I mean by that is, I am one of the stories I share in this book was my own journey of, sometimes when you're flying under the radar, you're so underestimated, no one sees you coming. And I went through that experience as a really small brand for a number of years that everyone discounted, nobody thought was gonna amount to anything in the beauty industry. And in that season, everyone was just nice. They don't care. Like it's, and when we finally started gaining traction on QVC, I went through this moment. And by the way, 98% of the other brand founders, including women, were huge champions of me the whole time.
Yeah.
But I went through this moment where there's 3 other women in the QVC green room who weren't so happy when I started doing well.
Yeah.
And it was a really weird experience. And it turned into adult bullying. Like I would leave the QVC green room, sob my eyes out in the parking lot. I didn't know how to handle it. I hadn't gone through it before. And meanwhile, I'm, in my 30s going through it. And it was really embarrassing. I felt like I went through a phase of, is it me? Am I, like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not being loved or included or made to feel like I belong or celebrated? I went through all the emotions. I talk about all that. Anyone who's dealt with bullying or not being included or being hurt by other friends or having friends betray you. That's really what it felt like. But I went through all the stages of this process, and I got to the point where I realized a couple of huge lessons that were life-changing for me around this topic. And one of them is that I don't believe, like I remember being in the QVC green room realizing, oh, they're actually distracted by me.
Yeah.
Like they're distracted by me, but I'm not going to be distracted by them. And I had this moment where I realized, and now I live my life this way, I do not believe we are on this earth to compete with anyone else. I think the only person we're here to compete with is the person we know we're born capable of becoming.
Right.
And I know for me, I'm nowhere there yet. But I also knew that those 3 women who were bullying me had nothing to do with who I'm capable of becoming.
And you also say, which I think is so right, is that, and I'm paraphrasing, detractors are really admirers in disguise.
Isn't that so good? Okay, so my friend Trent Shelton, this is so good. My friend Trent Shelton said this. He said, haters are just confused supporters.
Right. That's the real quote.
Right. He said haters, he goes, they spend their time commenting online. He's like, that's love. He's like, they sometimes do a different profile to go on and hate on you. He's like, that's love too. He's like, they just have a really weird way of showing it. Haters are just confused supporters. But anyways, I think, I live my life that way. I think we get in life what we give. I think anyone else, like using what we have to lift someone else up, has nothing to do with our own ability to rise higher. Me, like a couple months ago, I get a phone call from the Mel Robbins show about having me on a segment. The first thing out of my mouth is thank you. The second thing is, have you heard Leah Valencia Key's story? And I start pitching another woman who's another female founder.
It's a great story.
Well, great story. And then what ends up happening is I got to the show, they called her, she got her own segment on the same show I did. And it was the most beautiful thing. And I just think that, and one more thing to add to that, because I think when we built It Cosmetics, right? I mean, the beauty industry is crowded. It's jam-packed. A lot of people say it's impossible to break in. And we did break in. And we then—
Did you?
Brian, this is crazy. When I was a Denny's waitress, I would save my tip money to buy like my favorite MAC lipstick or like a Lancome eyeliner. And so all the years when I'd walk in the department stores, and I'd see all those brands, I would dream of It Cosmetics being there one day, but they all told me no forever. And anyways, on our journey to eventually becoming the largest luxury makeup company in the country, which is crazy because I remember when we passed all the brands, I would save my Denny's tip money to buy. And I was just like, God can dream bigger dreams for us than we can for ourselves. But I just want to share one thing about the whole idea of competition. When we, for years, we couldn't afford to hire anybody.
Yeah.
And then we finally were, and we built a team of over 1,000 people across the country. And I was so blessed to hire people way smarter than I am in all the different departments. And but one of the things that I did that I think is really unconventional, and I just want to share it because I think someone might need to hear it today who's
Right.
watching this with us, is, you know, I started, and this happens to all of us, this idea of comparison and competition. And I just remember when I started being able to afford to hire people from inside the beauty industry who had expertise and were way smarter than me in lots of areas. But one of the things they would do is they would continue to come up to me and show me what other brand is doing this
Yeah.
and what other brand's hot in the store. And then the buyer from this store wants us to do this because it's selling well for another brand. And the one thing, and I did a lot of things wrong, and I talk about those in the book too, but one of the things I did right was every time that would happen, every time, even one of my own employees or my own leaders in my company would come up and say like, oh, we need to do this because this is hot. Everyone's buying the, you know, it was like, listen, I would say these words to the point where I think they would like probably either walk away and flip me off or
Yeah.
like be able to repeat them like without me finishing. I would always say like our greatest threat to our business is not what the competition's doing, is if we actually get distracted by it and tempted to dilute our own authentic secret sauce.
Yeah.
And I'd say that over and over and over because I think, and I got good at turning down short-term money just because it was hot in a store.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you're going to build long-term customer trust, that's the only way to do it. You have to stay authentic to your own brand DNA.
Yeah.
Like that's your magic, right? Not what's hot now or who's selling for what brand or whatever is going on.
And you talk in the book, you give some examples of other brands who tried to do what you were doing and were not as successful. And it's really simply because, like you said, you're paying too much attention to what's happening what's going on around you and not enough about what's happening in front of you.
Yeah, and it's like if there's another brand that does what we do authentically, I am so for it. But what I see happening, and it's like now I look back, it's wild because now I've done over 1,000 QVC shows myself, and I've had the blessing again of meeting tens of thousands of entrepreneurs. And in the long run, this is every industry, by the way, whether it's styling, beauty, anything. When
Yeah.
you look back over a number of years, 90% don't make it.
Yeah.
95% don't make it. And so the thing I find fascinating is looking back and going, what's that through line in the people that do make it?
Yeah.
And it's wild, Brian, because when I look at all the brands, thousands, and the through line of the ones that have made it, the ones that have built something that lasts, that have repeat purchase rates, that build something that matters, it's not how smart they are or how well funded their company is or how many connections or how hot they are, anything like that. The through line I've seen is literally the ones that stayed authentic to who their own brand DNA, right?
Yeah.
Their own secret sauce. Like if they're a beautiful artistry brand, or if they're edgy or whatever their authenticity, their authentic positioning is, they don't get distracted when, you know, sea salt in the which ocean with glitter is hot, right? They don't get distracted and go, oh, that ingredient's hot, let me do a whole collection around it, and now I'm a natural lot. No, it's like they stay authentic even if they're not hot in the moment, because they build customer trust that way.
Yeah.
People believe when they launch a product that it's special. Like, and I look back, that's who makes it in the long run.
Sure.
That's who makes it. And people have to stay strong because not to get TMI here, but like retailers have their own goals and everyone wants to make their bonuses, and so everyone puts pressure on you. They don't mean to, but they want you to launch what's hot. They want you to get distracted. They want to have their own success. And you have to be so strong when it's your brand, right? When it's you, when you're the stylist, when you're the artist, when it's your personal brand, you have to stay so strong. I had to get good at learning how to not people please and how to tell people no. And I wasn't good at that for a long time, especially when I wanted to get in there so bad for so long. They were all telling me no. They finally got me in their stores. And then I had to learn how to say no to them because it was the right thing for the product development long term.
Yeah.
That's a
So
lot.
no,
I'm fired up.
at the core though, staying true to yourself. It's just
Yeah.
believing in yourself. You're your own
And
biggest.
trusting yourself. That's the thing, Brian, right? Trusting yourself. Because here's the thing, y'all, that's so hard. It's so hard when all of a sudden, especially any entrepreneurs watching us live right now and watching the replays, when you have been told no and you're not getting the traction you want to get, and then you finally get it, right? Or someone finally gives you a big yes and then they tell you what to change, you're in this position over and over where you're like, do I trust myself
Mhm.
or do I trust them?
Yep.
And those are the moments that change our life.
Yeah.
Those are the moments that define our life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, such a great conversation. I just want to remind everyone that if you have any questions for Jamie, we have about 10 minutes left. Please feel free to leave them in the chat. If not, we're going to keep chatting. Someone just mentioned in the chat box, Jamie, you're an amazing human being. Your authenticity allowed your inner and outer beauty to revolutionize the beauty industry. And you really have. And one of the most visceral passages for me in the book was the anecdote you shared about the speech you gave at the 2017 CEW Awards, which for those who may not know, it's sort of like the beauty Oscars. Every big person in the industry is there. And Jamie, you describe a speech that you gave that ruffled a lot of feathers at the time, really holding people in that room, meaning in the beauty industry, accountable for the imagery that they use and how that imagery may make women feel about themselves.
Yeah.
My question is, since then, there have been some positive changes that have been made. You look at a retailer like Walgreens, which is now putting, disclaimers on their beauty advertisements saying when they're retouched and when they're not retouched. So there's some progress being made. I wonder if you were giving that speech in 2021, would what you say be different?
Mm. Yeah, that was a day, Brian. That was a day.
I was there, Jamie. I remember that day. I was there.
So, okay, so you'll know anyone who's watching us who's like, what are they talking about? Yeah, it is like the beauty Oscars, right? And it's one big room. And I just remember I'd gotten this huge award and I thought, wow, I was like this unknown underdog of the beauty industry. And 8 years later, getting the biggest award. And my first instinct was, let me just give a really expected, people pleasing thank you speech. I would have meant every word, but that's what it would have been. And I don't know how long it was before the event, but I had this big aha moment where I was like, wait a minute, in this one room on this one day are going to be the decision makers
Yeah.
from all of the top beauty companies around the world that make the decisions that impact what billions of people see
Yeah.
in beauty ads.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't make this speech about me making people happy. I'm like, I am not going to throw away my shot. You know what I mean? And I was so scared. I was shaking on that podium, like shaking. But I basically, my whole intention for that day was, even if, and there was every brand probably in the world there, even if they weren't going to shift how they used images and how inclusive they were because they knew it was the right thing to do, maybe if they saw our success, like, oh, you can make money doing that too. I was just trying to think of every angle, and I did a whole speech, actually inspired by Oprah's words, which I gave her credit for on the podium too, but really around this idea. She always says, what will you do with the energy that is you? And I gave a speech that day called What Will You Do with the Power That Is You?
Yeah.
And I challenge everyone to really consider how the images they use make them feel, and personally, and if they're proud of them. And yeah, it was a wild day. And I remember after the speech was over, and there's so many people that came up to me crying from the audience, talking about how impacted, how they work in the beauty industry, but how they've had these feelings too of not enoughness and not being included and all that. And then other people weren't so happy. Other people weren't so happy after.
You described
And
the book.
yeah, I talk about it a lot in the book. And, you know, if I were to do the same speech today, I believe in my heart I did the right thing. Like right before that speech, I don't know if you've ever watched that Steve Jobs commercial. It's old school for Apple, where he says it's the best commercial, but and it's not even his words. He's reciting someone else's words, Jack Kiersack, I believe. But in the commercial, he says, the people who are crazy enough to believe they can change the world
Will
are
do.
the ones who do.
Right.
And I listened to that over and over and over, and I prayed and I cried that day because I knew I may not have the same number of friends at the end,
Yeah.
but I knew it wasn't about me. It was not about me. It was about something bigger than me. I would do it over again, and I would add to it, not just what will you do with the power that is you in terms of the images you put out there into the world, but also in terms of the teams you're building at the most senior level inside your own companies.
Yeah.
And do those teams look like the customers you're serving?
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing.
That's great. So we do have a couple questions from the audience. One is, what do you say to young entrepreneurs? I'm a college student and would love your take. What would you tell your younger self?
Oh, so much.
And that's
so much.
That's from Liz. Thanks for your question, Liz.
Yeah, thank you. That is exactly why I wrote this book. All the stuff, I don't know if I can swear, so I'm not going to swear. All the stuff I wish I would have known that would have saved me a million nights crying myself to sleep. Okay, if I'm going to say one thing, I would say that we all have intuition. And a lot of people say, I trusted my gut and it was wrong, or I don't know how to hear my own intuition. If I were going to focus on anything, it wouldn't be making sure you do great in school. That's going to sound terrible. If you're in school, do great in school. It wouldn't be any of the stuff. It would be, how do you truly start this process of building your muscle of intuition? How do you learn to get still and to hear your own gut? And give yourself grace in this process, because this is a lifelong journey of learning to do this. But learning to get still and hear your own truth and make the decision to trust it. I believe right now, everyone watching you and me, Brian, right now, they kind of know. If they get still, they know if they're in the right job or not. They know if they're in the right relationship or not. They know if there's a friend that doesn't deserve to have them as a friend. Like, we do. And we have like this knowing. But what happens in life is all of a sudden we let our own self-doubt get so loud. We let other people's opinions, the people who love us that are scared of what we're doing, like the lack of traction around us and our own, everything gets so loud. And we start making decisions based on that instead of who we are. And we stop learning to trust ourselves. And that's why I think people end up talking themselves out of their own truth and literally never becoming the person they're born to be. So that's a big answer for a simple question, but I would say really put in the work of learning how to hear yourself and trust yourself.
I love what you just said about training the muscle of intuition. I've never thought of it that way before, but it's so true. Like, it is a muscle that you need to keep working constantly to make it strong, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, and we have to give ourselves grace, because sometimes we think we heard our gut and we trusted it, and then we're like, oh, I'm not wrong, right? It's a muscle. And, I talk a lot and believe it about, one of the things that I would do too is, like, even if you just take some time and think back to a time in your life where, you had a gut feeling about somebody. It could have been like a dude you're dating and he's like, my phone broke, and you knew it didn't break. You knew, right? But you decide, am I gonna ignore my knowing or not? And you start thinking back in life about moments you had those feelings and you trusted them, or moments you had it and you didn't trust them. And then you start building on that muscle and refining it over time. So that's my biggest thing, because that's going to guide you through, for Liz who asked, going to guide you through your career on knowing if you take that other job or you stay where you're at, knowing if you're, you know what I mean? If you're in the right spot and maybe you don't love it now, but you need to build that skill set, and you have to trust that knowing. That's the most important thing.
So I think we have time for one more quick question, and it does come from the audience. So Jamie, this is kind of specific. If you were a brand new entrepreneur starting today,
Yeah.
what are the first 3 things you do to kind of build your brand in what might seem like a crowded space?
Yeah. Yeah. Because right now there's no barriers to entry, right?
Yeah.
So, and that has pluses and minuses.
Right.
Pluses and minuses. So the pluses are you can get in there for free and you can start right away direct to consumer for free in any area, any space.
Yeah.
The minuses are it's so crowded, right? Okay, 3 things I would do. I would throw your ego out the window.
That is the best advice.
Right? Completely. Because I have seen so many people not make it because their own ego and the things they choose to spend money on, the things they think the way they think they need to show up on social media, the way that all that kind of stuff. Like at the end of the day, I would throw your ego out the window. I'd be ready to be super scrappy.
Yeah.
I talk about so many of the most honestly, they're embarrassing stories, but I just feel like that's how I feel like I had to share them
Yeah.
and believe it because that's how we know, like, oh, I'm not alone sitting in my living room trying to tape my phone up to the thing, not being able to afford my $1 hot dog from Costco. Like, I wanted to share it all, right? Like, I talk about using my middle name to be head of PR. Like, if this were today, Brian, just to share it. So I couldn't afford to hire anyone for years, right? So I used my middle name, Marie. She got her own email address, marie@itcosmetics.com. And she was head of PR and head of customer service. So like, if this were today, Marie would be like, oh my gosh, Brian Underwood, great news. Our founder is available for an interview. We see you have a Glam Hive panel coming up. Like Marie would pitch you, and Marie got ignored all the time. Marie got rejected.
Poor Marie.
Poor Marie. No, she was a hustler though. But I would say no ego. I would say whatever you do, know your truth, know your why beneath the why. Do that work now. I don't know if you caught the beginning of our segment together, or you can go back and watch it later, but I talk about how important it is to know why you're doing, but not just the why that we always hear thought leaders talk about. Know your why. I talk a lot, and I wrote a whole section about this, and believe it, in the book on how to peel back the layers and go deeper.
Yeah.
Because for me, if I hadn't done that work early on, I wouldn't have made it through the 3 years of rejection, of everyone telling me no, of all the beauty retailers telling me no. So really knowing your why beneath your why. I have so much to say. Another big one is if you are in the beauty space, or really any space, protect your IP early on and get your formula ownership early on before the manufacturers care about you and don't want you to go anywhere else and won't give it to you. like early on, do all the unsexy stuff that gets your that gets your foundation in place, that you can stand on, from your IP ownership to your trademarks to your formula ownership. Get that stuff in place, because when you try to do it later, when people are actually making money off of you, they do not want to give it to you, and then that creates problems. The last thing I'll say, sorry, I could do like 500 things on this, is just don't ever get distracted by what other people are doing. It is so tempting to do it, but the second you worry about what someone else is doing in your space and you're tempted to dilute who you are, that's when you lose the magic. All the research shows you create a barrier of disconnection between another human being or your own customers. We think we need to show up as our representative. We don't. That's the barrier. It's like, F all that. Show up as you fully are. It's more freeing, it's more fun, but it's also your superpower.
Jamie, it was so good to talk to you. It was so good to see you. Thank you so much for sharing.
I love you, by the way. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for sharing your whole journey too, even online and with your daughter, with everything.
Thanks, Jamie. And I know that there's some other questions in the chat. I'm so sorry we won't be able to get to them, but a lot of them will be answered in this book. So I really encourage everyone who hasn't bought Believe It to go out and order it or go to your bookstore and buy it. It's an incredible, incredible read. Speaking of unsexy things, we're going to do a little bit of a room reset. So grab a cup of coffee. The next panels are going to start in about 10 minutes. And again, Jamie, you're the best, best, best. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was
Thank you so much.
a real pleasure.
It was so good. Thank you so much. Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
Jamie. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in.